Now, in no particular order, here's who I think is the most underrated players, rarely mentioned, if ever mentioned or talked about in the history of Big Brother. Now, my list consists of number 1, Will Mega. Number 2, Lisa Donahue. Number 3, Hayden from Big Brother 16. Number 4, Jeff Weldon from Big Brother 17. And number 5, Holly Allen from Big Brother 21. Now let me start from bottom to top. Holly Allen, because she did a great job at socializing. She was able to flip votes and save one of her close allies in Kat Dunn in the game, and she was able to put out fires for her number 1 ally in Jackson Mickey. And I feel like you have to watch the live feeds to see the social hierarchy, the social interplay, and the social dynamics that really makes up 90% of the game. And people who do really well at that are most of the time underappreciated because that stuff usually doesn't make the TV edit. So Holly Allen, for that reason, flipping votes, saving allies, and putting out fires is why she's an underrated, great social player. And of course, she is able to win a lot of competitions when she needs to. Well, maybe not a lot, but enough to keep her being a competition threat where you second guess putting up on the block. Now, number 4 in Jeff Weldon, I believe he's a very underrated player because early on in the game, he was nominated and he was evicted number 3, but he was able to flip 2 votes in Steve and in Liz because of his social game. I mean, the reason that he really got nominated was because he made one of the house guests feel threatened and jealous because he was taking his potential showmance away from him and flipping her over to his side. I mean, he was almost able to save himself just in the 3rd week of Big Brother. And to have that much social clout and influence while being a target that early in the game was very highly impressive. So that's why I rank Jeff Weldon at number 4. Now, number 3 is Hayden Voss of Big Brother 16. Now, next to Derek Levasseur, the winner of that season, he was able to have pretty much everybody in that house liking him. I mean, he even was able to have Donnie and Jocasta be good allies of his. And those were the 2 people that Derek never had, but Hayden was. He even had Victoria as his sort of sidekick. And I think that was the main reason why Derek targeted him, outside of Caleb reminding Derek of the numbers in his alliance. I mean, he was a sort of a surfer dude bro archetype who was rather impressive, and I believe he could have been a threat in late game competitions if he was able to secure those allies or secure certain competition wins. And so he's underrated because people see that season as being dominated by Derek and Derek alone. But if you looked at the live feeds, you saw that he had everybody really in that house liking him. Now, next up, number 2 is Lisa Donahue. Now, even though she's a winner, she's very underrated because of Daniel Reyes and Jason. But mainly Daniel Reyes. People see her as the one who got screwed out of that season. But Lisa was able to dump a showmance for her game and was able to learn from the best player and then convince the best player to take her to the end. Even when she had better odds in Amy, she could have took to the end instead. But Lisa was able to be likable enough that Danielle, the best player, didn't even want to get rid of her. And number 1, Will Mega. Will Mega is the most underrated Big Brother player in the history of the game because he was basically the first person to socially antagonize his house guests, and he was the first person to throw competitions. Not Dr. Will Mega. Now, the reason why he was the first evicted also in the first season, it was because back then people weren't shy about calling out bigotry no matter what race it came from. But nowadays he would be perfect, with things like BLM and the woke movement on BB Twitter. People would be praising him because back then in 2000 and 2001 he was known for calling everybody racist, specifically white people. And now, since that's a popular thing, I think his presence would be appreciated now because he's all about that racial propaganda. But I still acknowledge him as a good player, even though I don't care about the racial propaganda. I still recognize it as a trait that people like to reward now. So those are the top 5 players that's underrated in Big Brother that rarely get mentioned.